She had always been the kind of person people overlooked. In the halls of the music academy, she moved quietly, her presence almost invisible. She didn't talk much, and she never tried to impress anyone. Most of her classmates had their own groups, laughing and sharing notes, while she sat alone, carrying her worn-out notebook filled with musical ideas and sketches. Teachers saw her as just another student, someone who didn't stand out, someone who might pass the exams but would never shine. There was nothing remarkable about her in their eyes. Her clothes were simple, her hair tied back without care for style, and her eyes often seemed lost in thought. On the surface, she looked ordinary, almost forgettable. But beneath that ordinary exterior was a mind that lived in music. From the moment she had first touched a piano as a child, she had felt a connection so deep it was impossible to explain. Music spoke to her in ways that words could never reach. She would spend hours at home, pressing keys and listening to the sounds she created, imagining entire stories unfolding with each note. No one around her knew how much time she had spent, perfecting even the smallest details, how she had taught herself complex pieces by ear, and how she understood the structure of music in ways that most students could not. To anyone else, she seemed average, but in her world, she was constantly growing, learning, and exploring. She arrived at the academy early every morning, often before the teachers and other students. She liked the quiet of the empty rooms, the soft echo of her fingers on the keys, the way the notes seemed to linger in the air, almost waiting for her to guide them. She practiced with a focus that was almost frightening to anyone who saw it, though no one did. Most of the time, she was alone, and that solitude allowed her to hear things others could not. The subtle rise and fall of a melody, the delicate balance of chords, the tiny variations in tempo that made a piece feel alive, all of it became part of her world. In those moments, she was not just playing the piano, she was speaking, thinking, breathing through music. Her classmates never knew this side of her. In class, she would take her seat quietly, pull out her notebook, and jot down notes as if she were just another student following instructions. When the teacher asked questions, she gave answers that were polite but brief. She never raised her hand to volunteer, never drew attention to herself. To everyone watching, she was competent, but not exceptional, a student who would get by without causing any trouble or making waves. This quiet nature only reinforced the teacher's belief that she was unremarkable. They often compared her to the more outgoing, confident students who were always eager to show off their skills. She was nothing like them, and that made her easy to underestimate. Despite the lack of recognition, she never allowed herself to be discouraged. She understood that real growth often happened in silence, away from the eyes of others. She remembered the early years of her life when no one had believed in her ability to understand music at a deep level. Family members had told her that she should focus on practical things, that music was a hobby, not a future. Yet she had persisted, secretly devoting every spare moment to learning, listening, and experimenting. By the time she reached the academy, she had developed a unique style and a technical skill that few could match. She had memorized hundreds of pieces, learned to play them by ear, and even composed small works of her own. But all of this remained hidden because she had learned to survive in a world that judged by appearances rather than substance. The irony was that her teachers had no idea what she was capable of. They assumed her quietness was a lack of confidence or a lack of talent. They often praised more vocal students for their supposed potential, while overlooking the depth of her abilities. Sometimes, she would watch them focus on others and smile to herself, knowing that her time would come, even if they couldn't see it. She didn't need validation from them. The music itself was her teacher, guiding her through each challenge, pushing her to improve, and rewarding her with moments of pure joy. One afternoon, as she sat in the practice room with sunlight streaming through the windows, she played a piece she had been working on for months. Her fingers moved effortlessly over the keys, each note perfectly timed, each chord resonating with emotion. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't performing for an audience. She was simply lost in the music, feeling it in every fiber of her being. The room was filled with sound, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. She closed her eyes and let herself go, letting the piano carry her into a space where nothing else mattered. Her classmates would sometimes peek in and see her playing and whisper among themselves, "She's good, I guess," one would say, "but she's just a quiet, nothing special." They didn't understand that true talent wasn't always loud or flashy. It could be subtle, hidden beneath layers of discipline, patience, and relentless practice. They couldn't see the countless hours she had spent alone, the sacrifices she had made, or the depth of understanding she had developed. To them, she was just another student. To her, every note was a world waiting to be discovered. Even the teachers who occasionally passed by would nod politely and move on, never stopping to truly listen. They were too busy managing the class, critiquing those who were already in the spotlight, encouraging the confident performers who demanded attention. They never suspected that this quiet student, who always blended into the background, had mastered complexities they themselves admired but could not teach. They didn't see the way her fingers could dance across the keys with precision, the way her interpretations carried meaning beyond the written notes, the way her music could make anyone who listened feel something profound without even realizing why. Despite the lack of recognition, she carried herself with a quiet pride. She knew who she was and what she could do. She didn't need applause or compliments to validate her talent. Her motivation came from within, from a love of music so deep that it filled every part of her life. She didn't practice for grades, for competitions, or for approval. She practiced because it was a conversation with something greater than herself, a dialogue that required patience, humility, and dedication. In many ways, this made her stronger than the students who sought constant validation. While they worried about being noticed or praised, she focused on becoming better, on learning more, on expressing herself fully through the piano. She understood that mastery was a slow journey, built on countless hours of attention to detail, mistakes, corrections, and rediscovery. She embraced the solitude that others feared, finding freedom and strength in it. Each day at the academy was another step in a long, unending path toward perfection, and she walked it with quiet determination. No one at the academy could have predicted what was coming. Her talent, hidden beneath layers of modesty and silence, was waiting for the right moment to emerge. And though the teachers thought of her as unremarkable, they were about to discover that they had completely underestimated her. The quiet student, overlooked by everyone, had been preparing for a moment that would change the way they saw her forever. But until that moment arrived, she remained patient, continuing her silent work, letting her fingers tell stories that only she could hear fully, knowing that one day, the music would speak for itself. The day began like any other, with the soft hum of students arriving at the academy and the teachers bustling about, organizing their lessons. The quiet student entered the building as usual, carrying her notebook and sheet music, her steps silent on the polished floor. She had no idea that this day would be different, a day when the ordinary routine of classes would shift dramatically and bring her hidden talent into the spotlight. As she settled into her seat in the main music room, she noticed a ripple of anticipation in the air. Her classmates whispered to one another, glancing at her with curiosity and amusement. Though she paid them little attention, she had grown used to being overlooked, and the thoughts of others rarely distracted her from the music she carried inside her. The teacher called the class to attention and began explaining the day's exercise. Today was meant to be a challenge, a test of skill for every student. The teacher spoke of advanced piano pieces, compositions that required precision, creativity, and a deep understanding of musical theory. Everyone was to perform these pieces in front of the class, showcasing their technique and interpretation. The quiet student felt a familiar flutter of anticipation, not from fear or excitement, but from the awareness that her time to reveal herself might be approaching. She had prepared for challenges like this countless times at home, practicing pieces that even the best students struggled to master. When the teacher's gaze landed on her, she felt the familiar weight of expectation, or rather, the lack of it. The teacher assumed she would falter, as she always seemed unremarkable in class. Other students exchanged knowing looks, some smirking, certain that she would fail. It was an unspoken joke among them, that the quiet student might as well not even attempt the challenge. The pieces she was about to play were complex, demanding mastery of rhythm, melody, and dynamics. But the teacher's assumption was that she would make mistakes, miss notes, or fail to convey the emotion of the music. Little did they know, she had been ready for this moment for years. When her turn was called, a ripple of quiet laughter and whispered comments swept through the room. Some students even muttered under their breath, saying she shouldn't have been chosen, that it was a waste of time. She simply stood and walked toward the piano, her posture calm, her mind focused. She carried herself with quiet dignity, not arrogance, but a certainty born from countless hours of preparation. As she approached the piano, she could feel the curious eyes of the entire class on her, weighing her every move, judging her before she even touched the keys. She didn't flinch or look away. She simply took her seat, letting the world observe while she prepared to speak through her music. Her fingers rested on the keys for a moment, poised and ready. The room was silent except for the faint creak of the piano bench. The teacher nodded for her to begin, expecting hesitation or a faltering start. She took a deep breath, not for courage, but to connect with the music within her. The first notes she played were delicate, almost tentative, yet every sound was perfectly in tune and full of expression. At first, some students thought it was a simple warm-up, nothing remarkable. But as the melody unfolded, it became clear that something extraordinary was happening. Her hands moved with effortless grace, fingers dancing across the keys with precision and fluidity. The complex pieces, which had been designed to challenge the students, flowed seamlessly from her fingertips. Every chord was rich, every transition smooth, every pause intentional and filled with meaning. Her interpretation of the music was unlike anything her classmates had ever heard. The notes seemed to breathe, rising and falling in a way that made the compositions feel alive. She was not merely playing the piano. She was telling a story, conveying emotions that went beyond the written music. The room seemed to hold its breath, captivated by the unexpected depth of her performance. The teacher, who had been observing with skepticism, now leaned forward, eyes widening in disbelief. This was not the timid, average student they had known. This was someone who had an instinctive understanding of music, someone whose talent could not be ignored. The advanced compositions were being played not only flawlessly, but with an emotional resonance that commanded attention. Every pause, every accent, every subtle nuance spoke of countless hours of dedication and a natural gift that had been hiding in plain sight. As she continued, the expressions of her classmates changed from amusement to astonishment. Those who had whispered and laughed now stared in silence, some even with open mouths, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The quiet student, the one they had considered unremarkable, was transforming the room with her music. It was as if the piano itself had become an extension of her soul, and the melody she created carried a message that no words could convey. Her peers could feel it, though they could not explain it, and they found themselves drawn into the performance. Caught between disbelief and admiration, she played without rushing, without hesitation, letting each note linger just long enough to create tension and release, guiding the audience through the intricate layers of the composition. The room was filled with sound, but it was not just noise. It was music that moved people, that touched something deep inside. Even those who had doubted her, who had mocked her quiet demeanor, felt themselves changed by the performance. They realized that talent was not always loud or obvious, and that the quietest person could hold the greatest power. The teacher, finally unable to contain their amazement, whispered to a colleague, expressing disbelief at what they were witnessing. The advanced pieces that had been intended to reveal weaknesses were instead highlighting a brilliance that had gone unnoticed for too long. Every technical challenge, every difficult passage, every emotional twist in the compositions was handled with a skill and sensitivity that defied expectation. It was as if she had been born to play the piano, as if the music had been inside her all along, waiting for this moment to emerge. By the time she finished, the room was silent. No one clapped immediately. They were too stunned to react. Even the teacher was momentarily speechless, unable to articulate what they had just witnessed. The quiet student sat with her hands resting gently on the keys, eyes calm, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. She had done what she always did, played from the heart, letting the music speak for itself. But the impact was undeniable. The room had been transformed, and the perception of her classmates and teachers had shifted forever. After a moment, the teacher finally spoke, praising her performance with a mixture of admiration and surprise. The classmates who had doubted her began to murmur among themselves, acknowledging her talent, some even expressing regret for underestimating her. The quiet student smiled faintly, not out of pride, but because she understood that this was only the beginning. Recognition was not her goal, but she welcomed it, knowing that her efforts were finally being seen, even if just a little. The rest of the day passed differently for her. Students treated her with newfound respect, though some still struggled to reconcile the quiet girl they had ignored with the musician they had just witnessed. The teachers began to consider her in a new light, realizing that their assumptions had been wrong and that this student possessed a rare combination of skill, understanding, and emotional depth. She moved through the rest of her classes with the same calm presence, knowing that the performance had not changed who she was, but it had changed how others saw her. As the day ended and students packed their belongings to leave, the quiet student stayed behind for a few moments, sitting at the piano once more. She played a few notes softly, not for an audience, not for recognition, but for herself. The music was a friend, a companion, a way to process the extraordinary events of the day. She reflected on how easily people could be misled by appearances, how often talent went unnoticed, and how important it was to trust oneself and one's abilities. This day had proven that the quietest voices, the unassuming individuals, could hold the greatest power, and that patience, dedication, and a love for one's craft could overcome the assumptions of the world. When she finally left the academy, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the building. She walked home slowly, carrying her notebook and sheet music, thinking about the journey ahead. She knew that this performance was just the beginning of a much larger story, one that would require continued practice, resilience, and courage. But for the first time, she also knew that the world could no longer ignore her talent. The quiet student who had been overlooked had revealed herself in a way that could not be unseen, and the experience would shape the rest of her life, opening doors and opportunities that she had only dreamed of before. After the unforgettable performance, the quiet student returned to her routine, but nothing felt the same. The academy buzzed with talk of what had happened, and while she did not seek attention, she could not ignore the way people now looked at her differently. Teachers who had once glanced past her now stopped to observe her carefully, and classmates whispered in hallways, glancing in her direction. Some were inspired, some envious, and some just curious to understand how someone so ordinary-looking could command a piano with such power and grace. She carried herself with the same calm demeanor, quietly acknowledging the change without letting it alter who she was. Practice sessions took on a new energy. She still arrived early, preferring the quiet spaces where she could immerse herself in music. Yet now, there were always a few students watching her from the doorway, hesitant to disturb but eager to learn. Some approached her with questions about technique or interpretation, and she answered patiently, never flaunting her knowledge but sharing what she could. The room that had once been a private sanctuary became a place where others began to notice the dedication and subtle mastery that had always been her secret. And still, she played for the music itself, not for recognition. One afternoon, the teacher who had once doubted her decided to assign a particularly difficult composition to the class. The piece was known for its intricate passages and emotional complexity. The teacher watched closely as students took their turns, noting their struggles and errors. Many hesitated, stumbled over difficult chords, or played mechanically without understanding the emotional depth of the piece. When it was her turn, the atmosphere in the room shifted once again. Her fingers rested lightly on the keys, and the first notes she played immediately captured everyone's attention. There was a depth and clarity that made even the most confident students pause. Her performance began softly, almost as a whisper, drawing the listeners in. She did not rush, did not exaggerate. Each note had meaning, each pause had purpose. As the melody developed, it became clear that she was telling a story through the music. There were moments of tension, moments of reflection, and moments of release that left the audience captivated. Teachers watched in awe, recognizing the level of interpretation and control that had been hidden behind her quiet presence. The students who had once ignored her now leaned forward, unable to look away, their previous doubts replaced with admiration and curiosity. The quiet student's mastery was not just technical. She seemed to understand the emotional heart of every piece, translating it into sound that could touch anyone who listened. Even those who did not understand the theory behind the music felt its impact. Some had tears in their eyes. Others felt a shiver run down their spine. It was as if she could communicate feelings that words could not convey. And in that room, the music became a shared experience that connected every listener to her in a profound way. As she continued, the teacher finally asked her to play a section with variations, a test to see if she could handle improvisation. This had tripped up many students before, as it required creativity and confidence, not just practice. She nodded, her expression calm, and allowed herself to be guided by intuition and years of quiet preparation. The variations flowed naturally, surprising the class with unexpected harmonies and rhythms that still felt entirely appropriate. It was clear that she had not only memorized the piece but internalized it, making it her own. Her classmates, some still skeptical, now whispered among themselves in disbelief. They had never imagined that someone who seemed so ordinary could possess such a combination of talent, skill, and emotional intelligence. Some of the more competitive students began to reconsider their assumptions about what it meant to be talented. They realized that outward confidence and visibility did not always correlate with ability. The quiet student had demonstrated that true mastery could exist without fanfare, and that the most unassuming person could hold extraordinary power. The teacher, who had initially doubted her, approached her after class, speaking in hushed tones. There was a mix of admiration and curiosity, a desire to understand how she had achieved such control and expression. She smiled politely, offering small insights into her approach, emphasizing discipline, patience, and listening carefully to the music itself. She did not seek to impress or intimidate. Her goal was simply to share what she had learned in the years of solitary practice that had brought her to this point. The teacher left with a new understanding, recognizing that the quiet student was not just talented but exceptional, possessing a rare combination of technical mastery and emotional insight. As word spread throughout the academy, invitations to perform began to arrive. Small recitals, local events, and opportunities to play for visiting musicians provided new challenges and new audiences. Each time she performed, the same quiet intensity emerged, drawing listeners in and leaving them changed by the experience. She never sought fame or accolades. Her motivation remained the music itself, the joy of expression, and the deep connection she felt when she played. Yet the recognition she received allowed her to share her gift with more people than ever before. Even with growing attention, she remained humble and focused. She continued to arrive early, practice diligently, and explore new pieces with the same quiet dedication. Other students who had once ignored her began to approach her for guidance, eager to learn not just technical skills, but the mindset and discipline that made her so effective. She shared what she could, encouraging them to develop patience, listen carefully, and immerse themselves fully in the music. She became a quiet source of inspiration, showing that greatness could exist without the need for constant attention or validation. Her life outside the academy remained grounded. She still walked the same streets, visited the same quiet corners of the city, and kept her daily routines simple. The music was her center, and she allowed recognition and admiration to flow around her without letting it disrupt her focus. Friends and acquaintances began to notice a new confidence in her demeanor, not loud or showy, but calm, steady, and self-assured. People began to realize that this quiet individual carried a force within her that few could match, and that the music she created was a reflection of her inner strength. One evening, after a particularly demanding practice session, she sat alone at the piano, reflecting on how far she had come. The events of recent weeks played in her mind the initial disbelief of teachers, the astonishment of classmates, and the growing recognition from the community. She realized that every moment of solitude, every hour of practice, every struggle and triumph, had prepared her for this stage. Her talent had always existed. She had merely needed the opportunity to reveal it. And now she had shown the world, not for applause or praise, but simply because it was time for the music to speak. The quiet student understood that this was only the beginning. Each new challenge, each performance, each piece she learned would be another opportunity to grow, to inspire, and to connect with others through the power of music. She had discovered that patience and persistence, coupled with a deep love for what she did, could overcome assumptions, skepticism, and doubt. And she knew that the story of her talent was not just about her own journey, but about the potential in everyone who had been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored. In every silent corner, in every hidden effort, there could exist brilliance waiting to be revealed, just as she had revealed hers. As she closed the piano and left the practice room that evening, she walked with a quiet sense of purpose. The academy, once a place where she blended into the background, had become a stage for growth and recognition. But she understood that the true reward was not applause or attention, it was the music itself, the endless possibilities it offered, and the connection it could create between her and everyone who listened. And so she moved forward, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, confident in her skill, her dedication, and the knowledge that her time to shine had arrived, though she would always let the music, not herself, take center stage. The next day at the academy brought with it a mix of excitement and curiosity. The students and teachers were still talking about her performance, replaying the image of the quiet student who had stunned everyone with her mastery. She walked through the hallways as usual, calm and composed, carrying her notebook and sheet music. She knew that eyes were on her, but she did not seek attention. For her, the piano was the focus, the center of everything she did, and everything else was secondary. Yet, she felt a quiet awareness that her life at the academy was changing, and that new expectations were beginning to form. Her teacher, the one who had doubted her so strongly before, approached her with a composed but eager expression. The teacher asked if she would be willing to perform again, this time for a visiting musician who had come to observe the academy's students. The visiting musician was renowned, known for his exacting standards and sharp judgment, and he had a reputation for noticing true talent wherever it existed. She nodded quietly, agreeing without a word of hesitation. Inside, she felt a calm focus, a readiness that came from years of preparation and practice. The opportunity was daunting, but she trusted her skill and her connection to the music. As she entered the practice room where the visiting musician was waiting, she noticed the tension in the air. The other students had been observing, hoping to see if she could maintain the level of brilliance she had displayed the previous day. Some were nervous, unsure of what to expect, while others were genuinely curious. She sat at the piano, placed her fingers on the keys, and allowed herself a brief moment to center her thoughts. The first notes she played were soft, almost tentative, as if testing the waters. But the music quickly grew into something powerful and controlled. Each chord and phrase was precise, yet filled with feeling. The visitor's eyes widened as he listened. He leaned forward slightly, intrigued by the depth of interpretation and the technical control displayed. The student played a selection of challenging compositions, each one more demanding than the last. And with every note, it became evident that her talent was extraordinary. She moved through difficult passages with ease, and the music seemed to breathe under her hands. Her classmates watched in amazement, some whispering in disbelief, as she transformed the room into a space alive with emotion and beauty. The visiting musician, known for his critical eye, finally spoke after the performance. His voice was calm but filled with genuine admiration. He asked her to demonstrate improvisation, to take a familiar theme and create variations on the spot. Many students would have faltered at such a request, but she smiled faintly and allowed herself to explore the music freely. Her fingers moved naturally, crafting melodies and harmonies that were both surprising and perfectly suited to the original theme. The visitor's eyebrows rose in surprise, and he nodded slowly, clearly impressed. He whispered to her teacher, noting that he had rarely seen talent of this caliber in someone so young and unassuming. As she continued to play, the room was silent except for the music. Each note resonated, carrying with it a story, a depth of understanding that drew every listener in. The compositions were not just played, they were lived, expressed, and shared. The students who had doubted her were now captivated, realizing that the quiet individual they had overlooked possessed a rare combination of skill, creativity, and emotional intelligence. Even the teacher who had once assumed she was unremarkable watched with newfound respect, understanding that they had misjudged her entirely. After the performance, the visitor approached her, offering words of praise and encouragement. He remarked on the clarity of her technique, the depth of her interpretation, and the confidence she displayed in her improvisation. He asked her questions about her training and her approach to music, and she responded with humility, explaining her dedication to practice, her attention to detail, and her commitment to understanding every aspect of a composition. She did not boast or seek recognition. She simply shared what she knew, trusting that her experience could inspire others. Her classmates, many of whom had been skeptical, were now inspired. Some approached her for advice, asking about techniques, practice routines, and how she approached emotional expression in music. She responded patiently, offering guidance without judgment, encouraging them to explore music deeply and to cultivate their own voices. In doing so, she became not only a performer but a mentor, demonstrating that greatness could coexist with humility and a genuine desire to help others. The day continued with further performances, and each time she played, the reaction was the same: astonishment and admiration. The students who had been confident in their own abilities began to question their assumptions, realizing that talent was not always visible and that quiet dedication could produce results far beyond expectation. Her teachers, now aware of her extraordinary ability, began to encourage her more openly, assigning advanced compositions and inviting her to participate in events and recitals. The academy, once a place where she had blended into the background, was now becoming a stage for her growing recognition and influence. Despite the attention, she remained grounded. She continued to arrive early, practice diligently, and explore music with curiosity and patience. She understood that recognition was fleeting and that true growth came from continuous effort and commitment. Every day offered new challenges, new opportunities to improve, and new ways to connect with the music she loved. She welcomed these challenges, knowing that each one would refine her skill and deepen her understanding. As the afternoon turned to evening, she found a quiet moment alone at the piano. The room was empty, except for the soft echoes of her own playing. She allowed herself to experiment, exploring subtle variations, testing new ideas, and losing herself in the music. This was her true passion, the act of creation, of expression, of communication through sound. The previous accolades and astonished reactions were secondary, meaningful only in how they reflected her growth and the opportunities they created to reach more people with her music. In that quiet moment, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought about the early years of solitude, the countless hours of practice, and the patience she had cultivated. She remembered the times she had been overlooked and underestimated, and she felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that her perseverance had been rewarded, not through arrogance or recognition, but through the ability to express herself fully and authentically. She understood that her story was a testament to the power of dedication, humility, and belief in oneself, and that it could serve as an inspiration to others who were struggling to be seen or heard. The quiet student left the academy that evening with a sense of calm fulfillment. The world had begun to notice her, but she knew that the most important journey was still within. The music, the discipline, and the quiet moments of reflection and practice were the true rewards, the foundation of her growing skill and influence. She understood that recognition was temporary, but mastery and understanding were lasting, and she was determined to continue on this path, letting her music speak for itself and inspire others along the way. Her experience that day had proven that assumptions could be wrong, that quiet determination often hid great talent, and that a single performance could change perceptions forever. She had faced the skepticism of teachers, the doubt of classmates, and the critical eye of a visiting musician, and she had emerged not only successful but transformed, stronger, and more confident in her abilities. And she knew that this was only the beginning, that many more challenges and opportunities lay ahead, waiting for her to explore and conquer through the power of her music. After months of quiet dedication, the quiet student's life began to change in ways she had never expected. Invitations to perform at recitals, small concerts, and private gatherings started to arrive. People who had once overlooked her now sought her out, curious to hear the music that had left everyone astonished. She felt a mixture of calm focus and quiet excitement as she prepared for these new opportunities. Each performance was another chance to connect with listeners, to tell a story through music, and to continue the journey she had begun years before in solitude. She knew that recognition was fleeting, but the ability to share her talent and touch others was lasting and meaningful. One afternoon, she was invited to perform at a small concert for local music enthusiasts. The hall was modest, with wooden chairs and simple decorations, but to her, it was perfect. The audience was composed of people who loved music deeply, some of them musicians themselves, and she could feel their curiosity and expectation. As she sat at the piano, she closed her eyes briefly, letting herself breathe and connect with the music that had become such a central part of her life. The first notes rang out clearly, filling the room with a gentle yet confident sound. The audience was captivated immediately. Her performance was not about showing off technical skill, though it was undeniable. It was about communication, about reaching the hearts of those listening. Each piece she played carried emotion, telling stories of joy, sorrow, hope, and reflection. She could see the faces of the audience as she played, the eyes that glistened with tears, the small smiles that appeared at gentle passages, the furrowed brows at moments of tension, and she felt a quiet satisfaction. The music was doing what it was meant to do, connecting, inspiring, and moving people. After the concert, several audience members approached her, expressing their admiration and astonishment. Some were students, eager to learn from someone who had mastered both skill and expression. Others were adults who had long loved music, and were amazed by the depth of understanding she displayed. They asked about her journey, her practice routines, and how she had developed such a unique voice through the piano. She responded with humility, explaining that it had been a long journey of patience, quiet dedication, and deep listening. She emphasized the importance of loving the music itself rather than seeking attention or accolades. Her teachers continued to guide and support her, recognizing that her talent was extraordinary and needed careful nurturing. They assigned her new challenges, more complex compositions, and opportunities to collaborate with other musicians. Each new task was an opportunity to explore her skills further, to grow, and to deepen her understanding of music. She approached these challenges with the same calm focus that had always guided her, treating each one as a step on a continuous journey rather than a test. or a chance to prove herself to others. As her recognition grew, she began to mentor other students who had been overlooked or underestimated. She remembered her own early days, when no one believed in her abilities, and she wanted to offer guidance, encouragement, and inspiration. She taught them not just the technical skills of music, but also the mindset needed to grow patience, discipline, and a deep connection to the art. She showed them that quiet dedication could lead to extraordinary results, and that talent often lies beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Through these experiences, she learned something important about herself and the world. She realized that while recognition was gratifying, the true reward came from the act of creation and the ability to connect with others. Through her music, each performance, each lesson, each moment of quiet practice was meaningful in its own right. She understood that her journey was not just about personal achievement, but about inspiring others and sharing the beauty of music. Her daily life remained grounded and simple. She continued to wake early, practice diligently, and explore new compositions. She walked the same streets, visited the same familiar places, and maintained the routines that allowed her to stay focused and balanced. Fame or attention never distracted her. The music itself remained the center of her life. Friends and fellow students noticed her quiet confidence and calm demeanor, understanding that her strength came not from showiness but from steady, consistent effort and a genuine love for what she did. One day, she was invited to perform at a larger concert with several other talented musicians. The venue was more prominent, and the audience included people she had never imagined reaching. Despite the size and significance of the event, she felt only calm anticipation. She approached the piano with the same focus she had always cultivated, letting her fingers and intuition guide her. The performance began softly, building gradually into passages of intensity and complexity. Each note, each chord, each pause was deliberate, communicating layers of feeling that resonated with every listener. The audience was mesmerized. People who had never encountered her music were drawn into the story she was telling, feeling emotions they could not fully articulate. The quiet student's performance became a bridge between her inner world and the hearts of everyone in the hall. She could see the faces of listeners, some moved to tears, others smiling quietly, all sharing in the experience she created. In that moment, she felt the profound joy of connecting with others through music, knowing that her years of practice and dedication had led to this shared experience. After the performance, she received invitations to teach workshops, perform in more prominent venues, and collaborate with accomplished musicians. Each opportunity was a chance to grow, to explore new facets of her talent, and to inspire others. She accepted these invitations with a sense of purpose, always keeping the music at the center of her focus. Recognition and accolades were secondary. The real reward was the connection she fostered and the joy of creating something meaningful. She continued to mentor students, offering guidance not just in technique, but in cultivating patience, focus, and a genuine love for music. She encouraged them to trust themselves, to explore their own creativity, and to understand that talent often exists quietly, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Her story became an inspiration, showing that the ordinary could achieve the extraordinary through perseverance, humility, and dedication. Over time, she realized that her journey had come full circle. She remembered the days when she had been overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed, and she felt gratitude for the challenges that had shaped her. Those early experiences had taught her resilience, patience, and the value of quiet dedication. They had prepared her to share her talent with the world, and to inspire others to believe in themselves. Her music was not just a reflection of skill, but a reflection of character, and she took pride in that understanding. As she continued to perform, teach, and mentor, she remained true to herself, never seeking attention for its own sake. Her life was rich with purpose and fulfillment, grounded in the music that had always been her companion and guide. She understood that the recognition she had received was meaningful, but the true reward lay in the daily practice, the quiet moments of discovery, and the ability to touch the hearts of others. Her story became well known within the academy and beyond, inspiring students, teachers, and audiences alike. People spoke of the quiet student who had once seemed ordinary, but had revealed extraordinary talent, showing that perseverance, dedication, and passion could overcome doubt and assumptions. She had become a symbol of the power of music and the hidden potential within every individual, a reminder that greatness could emerge from the most unexpected places. In the quiet moments, sitting alone at the piano, she reflected on her journey and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She knew that her path would continue, filled with challenges, growth, and opportunities to share her gift. But she also knew that she had discovered something far greater than recognition or fame, the ability to create, to connect, and to inspire through music. She understood that this was her true purpose and that the music, and not the applause, would always guide her. As she walked through the academy and beyond, she carried a quiet confidence, rooted in years of dedication and a deep love for her craft. She had proven that assumptions could be wrong, that talent often hides in unexpected places, and that a single individual could change perceptions through passion, perseverance, and skill. Her story was a testament to the power of the human spirit, showing that the ordinary could become extraordinary when nurtured with patience, humility, and unwavering commitment. And so, the quiet student continued her journey, letting the music speak, and touching the lives of everyone who listened, knowing that the journey itself was the most beautiful reward of all.